to be fair. Yeah, because we talk, and so just friendly reminder, right? We're gonna go through the big book, we're gonna break it down, we're gonna talk about it. And it's not just the Nikki show. I do have like a wealth of information about the book, and I'm very grateful for that, for the people who came before me that taught me. For the most part, I didn't make any of this shit up. It's just like through experience and stuff like that. Um, and I want y'all to engage. Again, if something doesn't make sense to you in this book, or you think it's bullshit, or you disagree, like, let's talk about it, right? And I always encourage you to be a skeptic, but being a skeptic with an open mind. Because if you're a skeptic with a closed mind, you're just being fucking annoying, right? So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get quiet for just a minute. Let's invite God into the room. We're going to take a really deep breath. Hold it at the top for just a second. And slowly let it back out. Beautiful. Okay. So I think we ended at the physician who. Am I right? Did we get any further than that? Yeah, I think that's that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did a great job. Not even a page and a half. Okay. So, to be fair though, that we were writing down like definitions and shit like that, so that's good. So I'm just gonna jump right in. The physician who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we're maladjusted to life, we did read this, that we're in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete. Why do y'all think that actually like talking about the allergy and the physical factor of this whole deal is so important? There's no wrong answer.
I think part of it is to relate, um, to understand that, okay, I mean, for me, when I first heard about it, I was like, it makes so much sense. No
Sure.
wonder, because I knew I was alcoholic for years.
Mm-hmm.
But whole idea of once I take a drink, I can't stop. So I was like, yeah, that's me. That's me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it also shows us that like we can't will it to be different because we're physiologically different, and that's something that we can't change.
No, 100%. 100%. Kelly, what were you gonna say?
Wow.
You're ruining there.
But I will say,
Yeah.
it just validates our physical action, and it validates me in the fact that like not only is my mind fucked, but so is my physical being. Like the rituals are just as addicting. Like it like just validates the fuck out of me.
No, absolutely.
Which I love, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%, right? Because like that's been such a big part of this whole deal, right? Is addiction and alcoholism a moral dilemma, or is it a disorder of the mind and the body? Right? And over and over and over and over, right? Like a lot of people say that the big book has to catch up with science, but the big book led the way scientifically. It really, really did. And I think we talked about it a little bit last week, but it's not like Bill and Bob and like the first 100 sat down and just decided that this is what it is. It came from self-worth. It came from William James. It came from Carl Jung. It came from all of these leaders of the psychology world at the time, right? And all of their theories, right? We're in the doctor's opinion. They're very clear that this is an opinion and not a fact. However, since this opinion has been presented over and over and over, it's been proven that it's a fact, right? This is no longer just a theory. How exactly it works, why it happens, those things are still left up for debate. Right, but we are clear that it does happen and it's true, and it's not just because we don't give a shit about our parents, we don't give a shit about our kids and our family and our friends and our jobs, right? We're not just like lazy, like, I just want to get high for the rest of my life. Yes, our brains can tell us that because we get in so much shame and just tap out, right? But that's just not fucking true. Saying that I don't care anymore and I just want to die from this, I don't give a fuck about anyone else, is just part of the obsession, right? And the obsession just can, the allergy and the obsession feed off of each other so deeply. Um, and I just think it all makes so much sense because you're absolutely right. My brain tells me that I can just have one, even though historically I've never been able to. But why haven't I been able to? And I think that when we talk about the physical factor, when we talk about the actual allergy, and an allergy is just an abnormal, adverse reaction to a substance, right? So when people get all fired up about just the verbiage, it's like, it's not an allergy, and we do it too. It's not just the normies. It's like, well, my throat doesn't close, and I don't break out in hives. That's stupid. I thought it was stupid as shit, right? But when you just break it down to what it is, I'm having an abnormal reaction. Other people do sit at work and they're so stressed out and they had such a hard day and they're obsessing, right, about having a drink, about going home and smoking a blunt. And then they have a drink or two or three and then they don't. And then they stop. And that's it. Right? However, the thing with us is why the obsession is so important is because the allergy has historically happened to us so many times and I believe it's going to be different. Right? Or I'll be able to control and enjoy. And that's where like the two things come into play is if I'm controlling it, I'm not enjoying it. If I'm enjoying it, I'm not controlling it, right? Um, and that's why we say recovered and not cured. You know what I mean? Because when I'm recovered, the mental obsession has been lifted. So the physical allergy isn't being set off. The allergy is always there. It does not go anywhere, right? So it doesn't matter what my intentions are. It doesn't matter if I drink or I use, something's going to happen inside my body. And there's a very good chance I'm going to take off running, right? Um, and, oh God, I had a different point, but I guess that's it.
Something that you said to me in treatment that really stuck. This just wasn't making sense to me at that point. Was alcoholics, we can be recovered, kind of like someone who has cancer. You're in remission. Like
Right.
there's still that possibility the rest of your life, but so it never totally. You don't just get over it and 10 years down the road pick up a drink and everything's fine.
Right. That would be cured. Right, 100%. If my alcoholism was cured, I'd be able to drink normally. You know what I mean? And I think it's also important to note that what I was going to say, thank you for saying that, is when it comes to the spree, when we're looking at the cycle, a lot of times it's like, well, I haven't always had the allergy come up because I didn't always go on a spree when I used. That was my truth. I have been able to moderate in the past. So in my brain will remember those times and be like, see, I'm fine. Sure, it was 5 years ago. Sure, it was 1 out of 100 times, right? And it happened. So maybe this time we'll be all right. And I'm fucking not. I'm like, what the fuck? Because truthfully, when I was able to moderate, I still had a physical reaction. I felt uncomfortable. I want to drink a beer or two to just like calm down, but now my anxiety has risen because I had a physical response that is craving. Right? So just because I didn't continue using doesn't mean that the allergy didn't exist because I didn't realize that everyone didn't feel that way. You know what I mean? I'm like, anytime. And I know some of y'all have already heard the story, but one time I went like clubbing with my group of sober friends in downtown Dallas because we're all like several years sober and living our best life and we can go anywhere a free man can go, right? And we had one normie with us, and we stop at this one place, and she gets a drink, and she drinks half of it, and she's like, okay, we can go. We're like, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We're not in any rush. You can drink it. And she's like, no, really, I'm good. We're like, no, bless you. You still have like half of a fucking drink. Please, drink it. I just remember by the end, she's like, no, guys, I'm really good. We're all standing. We're just drinking. Circumstance so many times because one might assume that we're jealous and it's like living vicariously through. But I know my truth is that I didn't want to drink. There was no desire. Complete sanity was restored. And this is where like empathy comes in, right? And sometimes it's to a fault where I assume that you're experiencing what I'm experiencing. So if you experience life the way that I experience life, you're suffering right now by not finishing that drink. Like, hey, you don't have anything to prove to us. Just finish the fucking drink. Be in pain. She's like, I'm literally fine. Like, I like to keep my wits about me. Like, who the fuck are you? Yeah, that doesn't make any fucking sense to me. It really doesn't.
We're just not wasteful people.
We're not, yeah. Shit. But to find out that people didn't have that same, like, I need more was wild, right? I remember hearing, and this is one of those like cliches that whatever, but I remember hearing somebody being like, I know that I'm an alcoholic because when I drink to get drunk. And I was like, why else would you drink? Like, I really didn't get it.
Right.
It did not connect. And I'm like, so everyone's an alcoholic? And they're like, no, Nick. No. They don't. You don't get it yet. I'm like, I don't understand. Right. So that allergy really explains why in my brain I really, really, really believe, okay, I've been sober, I've been clean, or whatever the case may be during whichever period of my life, that I can just get high for one day, get it out of my system, feel that niceness for just a second, and I'll be fine. And now it's been 3 weeks, and I'm dope sick, and I'm doing all the same shit, and I don't know what fucking happened. The allergy happened, right?
So I've got a quick story. I got sober in '93 and stayed sober for 25 years and had gotten so far away from the program that, my life was a shit show.
Mm-hmm.
And when shit hit the fan in a way that I just could not accept, I couldn't live life on life's terms anymore. I wanted to kill myself. And instead I said, and that was the first time in 25 years the thought even freaking came back.
Yeah.
There's one other thing you can do. And I had been so far away from the program that I talked myself into, you're going to go drink for a week. And I really thought I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Go numb out for 1 week,
Yeah.
come back and get my shit together. And lo and behold, it was so much worse.
Yep.
Like, I was never drinking around the clock, and I have done the drinking around the clock for 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's insane how progressive the disease is, because I really didn't think I was like that kind of alcoholic that drank every single day around the clock. And that's who I became, and it doesn't matter how you put it in your system. Once you do, it's just like, I'm off to the races.
And it's so funny because you're literally textbook, like your stories in the book.
I know. I know. I'm about to work 4 freaking years, and I'm like, I gotta get this shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to die. And I've already been, in the hospital where they told my family she's not coming back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to start planning.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm so
That-
grateful to be sober today.
No,
I had the obsession in my mind today.
that's such a, and it's like, it is literally textbook, right? It's not because there's anything wrong with you, but you already gave the reason. Like, you've been so far removed from the program, and in order to remain recovered, I have to do things. And it's not just clinging on to sobriety one fucking day at a time and just every day waking up and asking God to keep me sober for 24 fucking hours. You know what I mean? Like, if that's what people are able to do and live a really happy life, then like, good for them. But like, that has never, will never work for me. I have to be in it, doing the fucking deal, right? And it balances out and just becomes life. It's not like, oh my God, I have to do acting, I have to do this 24/7, call my sponsor every 5 fucking minutes, right? It just becomes life. In the beginning, it has to look like that. Because I have also been like, I'm gonna get high for a year. That was my plan. I'm gonna get high for 1 year because I really loved AA. Or not even just AA. I loved 12-step fellowships and what they did for me. I believed in it wholeheartedly. And yet, the actual internalization of step 1 completely flew out of my head. And all of the things, like, they talk about working the step backwards. And it's like, stop sponsoring, stop meditating, stop praying, stop 10-stepping, fucking go back on all of the amends, right? Like, I made the amends and half of them said, hey, just keep doing what you're doing. That's the hardest amends you can fucking keep. because the amends is keeping what they told you to do to make it right. And when you're not continuing to do what you're doing, I had a sponsor once to be like, hey, so you haven't sent me a nightly. I've asked you to. You told me that you will. So do you want to go back to those 60 people that you just made amends to and let them know that like you haven't kept your commitment? And I was like, oh, yikes. Nightly, immediately, you know what I mean, at 5 p.m. You know, because she's right. I need people like that to hold my feet to the fire, right? So let's keep going. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, people who are not experts in the field at all, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little. But as ex-prone drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. And that's where so much shame and so much frustration and so much grief comes into play, is that all these things are happening. I don't fucking understand why. So then other people tell me, you just don't give a fuck. You don't want it enough, or you're stupid. And I say, that must be it. Because there's no other reason. And again, this is published in 1939, and we still are in that cycle. We still don't get it. People are still not giving us the fucking information. You know, we go to the meetings, we go drunk, we're not listening, and we don't give a fuck, and maybe it is handed to us, but we don't hear it. But even as people who are not involved in 12-step fellowships, it's so interesting, right? Like that in a wider community, this isn't somewhat common knowledge, right? And it does make sense when it comes to the news because we cause a lot of harm. We hurt them, right? So it in the book it compares it to cancer, right? To like, you know, when someone has cancer, people are loving and I'm paraphrasing here, but they're not angry at them. And I hate that comparison personally. I hate it because it really, I've noticed a lot more normies and people affected by us get so much more enraged because they're like, how dare you affect it to cancer, compare it to cancer. And I get that because people with cancer typically don't go and steal from their grandma. You know what I mean? Or fucking drive with their kids while they're drunk. They don't do that shit. We do that shit. I like to compare it more to like bipolar 1 or some other, you know, and we talked about that last week. Another mental illness that is more like accepted as an actual illness than alcoholism addiction is. We're gaining traction, right? However, and I believe personally that in order to continue to gain traction, we have to stop telling people that the reason why I use is because of my trauma. We have to stop telling people the reason why I relapsed is because I got divorced, is because of all these things. And then telling them in the same breath that they can't understand how I feel because that is so fucking dismissive. All right. I don't produce unique emotions. I react to them differently because my brain has a disorder that tells me I need to go get loaded. This has always worked for me. So this is what I need to do. Right. Whereas they grieve and suffer just as we do, but their brain doesn't tell them that. Can trauma make us progress faster? Sure. Absolutely. But correlation is not causation because I have people in my life that have parallel trauma to me and they don't drink themselves to death. You know what I mean? So I think that really hurts us when it comes to the stigma. So we have to look at what it is.
Along the lines of what you said, as far as like with the comparison with cancer, and then to like mental illness, I think why a lot of times throughout society they still don't view alcoholism as a disease. Whereas, I mean, 20, 30 years ago, mental disease, such as bipolar or depression or
Sure.
ADHD, they weren't really viewing it then as a disease either, like they are now. But there are medications for cancer. There's medications to treat mental disorders.
Yeah.
There's not really medications to treat alcoholism.
Right.
Therefore, because there's no medication for it, it must not be a disease. And I think that's why a lot of normal society who aren't aware with someone that's an alcoholic that is working the program, things such as that, they're so misformed or uneducated about it that a lot of them don't consider it a disease because there's no medication.
100%. And like, yes, we have had, and we're not going to go deep into it, right? But we do have more medication to help treat the symptoms of alcoholism, basically. Just like we have medication to treat the symptoms of other mental illnesses, right?
I have caught myself being upset with my sister because she wouldn't quit eating all that sugar and she
Sure.
wouldn't eat right. She was taking medication, but her health is really bad.
Yeah.
But she couldn't quit the craving for
Couldn't
sugar
quit.
or whatever it was that diabetes made her want.
Right, which is an addiction in itself is just different than ours,
Yes.
right? And it shows up differently in the brain and all that stuff.
And that's
And that's the thing, is like,
that
as I continue to look at this stuff and like being in school and like actually learning, because like me going to school for psychology, honestly, guys, like one of my focuses, like my minor is in addiction studies, right? I want to see how this stuff actually lines up, and so far, it's lining the fuck up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so school and be like, oh no, so, and I mean, granted, I just started, but so far I'm like, I can see it going, right? Like I said before, the stuff that we say in the fellowship, I have problems with. But nothing in here so far. I mean, obviously, like sexism, whatever. But they were really good for their time period. We'll give them credit for that. But so I just like finished my paper on mindfulness. That's what I asked you for your email. Please send it to me. I'll send it to you. There you go. And it really goes into, there's this guy, John Kabat-Zinn, that brought mindfulness to the Western world back in like the 70s or 80s or whatever. And he brought it not to treat addiction, but to treat physical and mental illnesses. And the efficacy of it is incredible. Like, there are so many studies that show that mindfulness will combat these illnesses and help people be more regulated. It brings down the So one of the things for us is like, I'm not going to go into all this stuff, but basically our brains are all fucked up. We can't deal with stress. Everything feels like a fucking catastrophe all the time. Right?
Yeah. These meetings,
Mhm.
you bring up mindfulness is so spot. I took home for Easter and we had a funeral and we had a bonfire family and being mindful of other people drinking and why they were drinking or how they were drinking. And me just paying attention that it wasn't about a celebration and it wasn't about just being sad and going to it. I really felt like being mindful of, and I never craved or wanted to join in, but I didn't want anyone to feel they can do whatever they want to do. They're normies, but
well, and that's the thing though, right? Is like when I talk about mindfulness, it gives us a segue into bringing it into everyday life like that, right? And when he did mindfulness, it's very specific kind of meditation, and I can go into a whole thing about it. But it does, Dr. Bob said that if the big book could be supplemented with anything perfectly, it'd be the Eightfold Path, which is where we get mindfulness, right? Which just like, I get excited. I'm like, just connecting dots all over the place, right? But my point in that, and even bringing this up, is that is not medication, quote unquote. Right? We like to look at holistic ways to treat things and discount it because now, and it's only been in the last few decades, right? Where, like, and please God, take your meds, I take mine as well, right? But Big Pharma has inundated us to the point where anything that isn't a medication is discredited, right? Including the 12 steps. And so many people are like, oh, AA needs to update their shit. No, they don't. They say, go to a good doctor, right? They say it in the fucking book. Like, come at me, right? So do all of the things. And if you want to help heal your mind, you have to do things in your mind, right? Does that make sense, right? So where the parallel here is like, yes, mindfulness treated pain, right? Not just mental illness, chronic pain, fucking all sorts of shit. And the 12 steps is not a far reach from that, right? So mindfulness is being aware without judgment. What do we do when we take a fucking inventory? Become aware of my thoughts. When I have to write down how I'm selfish, a lot of times we conflict and be like, oh, not everyone's selfish. No, everyone is selfish. Every single fucking person, not just us. For us, though, it's fatal because it fades into the mental obsession, which, I mean, feeds into the mental obsession, which feeds into the physical allergy, which feeds into our death. Right? So when we do this work, we become aware. And then as we continue to do this work and we meditate and we make amends and we build a fellowship, we start to become aware without judgment. Right? And we continue to do it because it's easy for my mind to slip after an amount of time and start getting back into, honestly, how society runs. Society runs really fucking unaware. Right? We're sleeping. It's true, you know what I mean? And super selfish and unwilling to admit that we're selfish. So, dude. Um, and completely unwilling to admit. Someone says, "Hey, you're being manipulative," and people just fucking blow up and get so defensive. And it's like, buddy, you're being manipulative. It's cool, man. No shade, no judgment. I get it. Fucking same, but let's look at it so we can actually have growth and change. And that's what this stuff does. So, okay, let's go back to what we were talking about, right? So, allergy. Great. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. I remember how we got here now. Though we work Though we work out our solution on a spiritual as well as altruistic plane, right, in a selfless way of giving to other people, we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he is then a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. It's really hard to get a drunk to understand what's going on, right? Or someone who doesn't feel good, right? So it's like, let's just get you. It's been a rare occasion that I saw someone who's actively detoxing that I walk in with a fucking big book. Like, now that I'm just setting them up for failure, right? They're gonna fucking hate it. So I'm gonna be soft. I'm gonna be gentle. I'm gonna tell them that they're loved. I'm gonna tell them no judgment and that I understand. I'm gonna give them some of my experience. And we talk about that more in working with others, right? So the doctor writes, the subject presented in this book seems to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. Still think that's interesting. There was therefore a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in masterly details in these pages. The first time I got sober, I did Big Book Awakenings, and one of the questions is does the Big Book give vague directions on how to stay sober? And that's the answer. No, it gives masterly detail. Which I don't know about y'all, but for me, that was so important because I still like I'm in school. I'm like talking to the professor, and she's giving these instructions. And I'm like, hey, I need clear cut directions, like set up for success. And that's exactly what I needed in the beginning. And thank God for my willingness to have that. Yes.
Okay, so what's interesting about it? You said I'm the previous, um, the medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction.
What's interesting about it?
Yeah,
Because we love to separate the two.
Oh, got it.
Alcoholics and addiction.
Okay.
And it even says alcoholic addiction. It's like alcoholism is an addiction. The fuck it ain't. You know what I mean?
Got it.
Honestly, like the way someone who is like primarily like alcoholic, there is a difference in the functioning of the brain. Slightly. But invariably I've watched people stop drinking and switch to something else and now they're just a fucking drug addict. Or they go right back to drinking.
Stop
Or vice versa. And fully
Becoming
100%, I watch it constantly, right? So just like the first in the doctor, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna do alcohol and drug addiction," and they talk about alcoholism, but I don't see the difference. But that's just my own personal thing. So we doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. What with our ultramodern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. What? What you got, Callie? What do you want to say? You want to say? No, you tell me. Excited.
That he's contradicting what he's saying
Mm.
because you know what I mean. So I'm always like careful because we're like moral psychology. Homeboy, this isn't a moral problem, you know. But it like leads back into good brain, bad brain, if that's a thing. Not good, whatever. Sorry.
No.
And the need for God. So I just love it. But I mean, it can be one of those moments for me that I'm like, wait, you just told me this isn't a moral dilemma. You just validated me there. But now you're telling me there's more needed in that area as well. So, like, let's continue talking, you know?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, moral definition. Okay. Moral definition. concerned with the principles of right and wrong behavior and the goodness or badness of human character. So I wrote this down in my binder, but I left it at home because I was thinking about you guys because I was going through personality and they were very specific that there is a big difference between someone's personality and their character. Character can change day by day, and that's why we have character defects, not personality defects. You are not bad. You at your core. My decisions, not great. My actions, flawed. Right? You know what I mean? So it's like, when we're looking at moral psychology, we're trying to get back to these principles. That's where we get into spiritual principles, right? A person's standards of behavior or beliefs concerning what is right or acceptable to them, a lesson especially when concerning what is right or prudent, holding or manifesting principles for proper conduct. I've also seen examining the nature of ethics and the foundations of good and bad character and conduct, right? So again, this is all about action, not, it's like the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is not a bad thing. Bro, we are connected. Collective consciousness, I'm getting started. But like, I just had this conversation with someone today at the place that I go to. I'm not gonna say it on here. And she was just like riddled with shame. I'm like, listen, buddy, we gotta like you just got here. We need to get you through the work so that we can shift the shame into guilt. Guilt is not a bad thing. Remorse is not a bad thing. It means you're not a fucking socio. Right? If you can just hurt people and run around and you don't lose any sleep at night and you're doing just and I take away drugs and alcohol because we can sleep just fine. There are a few fucking Valiums in there. You know what I mean? But like, and you don't feel something, that's a problem. Like now we're in a whole other arena, right? But you feeling remorse is a fucking good thing. So, and this is where like we're starting to touch into the spiritual malady. However, they're not outright saying that that's part of the problem. The definition of step one is mental obsession, physical allergy. Everyone has the malady, right? We have a spiritual solution. And for like the atheist and agnostic, right, who's having a hard time with the whole God thing, me, right, that's where we get to go into more secular language, right? And it's not a bad thing. That's what I believe throughout this book. Even in We Agnostics, it's like, hey, we only know one way to talk, right? This is how we're raised. Please don't deter you from getting down to the principles and the fundamentals of what we're actually talking about here, right? So that moral psychology would be 4 and 5, would be 10, would be 8 and 9, right? And it's like beyond their conception, like they're limited by their synthetic or man-made knowledge, right? Because we're trying to get into a place of like tap into this power that I fully believe already lives inside of all of us. It's just been blocked off. Whether that's from alcoholism, society, just the way that like we're trained and conditioned to operate. And I always say, I'm like, thank God I can't get away with just being a shitty person. Right? Like I get high and I will die if I'm allowed to just be a shitty human. And let me tell you something, I would be. Like I know. I know my past. I am clear on my past. I am clear on I was bullied when I was a kid and then I turned into the bully and I just thought I was protecting everyone and I justified it to a fucking to the core. Right? I mean, I gossip. I do all these things left to my own devices and it feels good in the moment. I get a little dopamine rush when I get you on my side and I character assassinate people, right? Thank God I can't get away with that. And in here, I put moral psychology is the spiritual experience. They're just using different words. Development of moral sense, i.e., the capacity for forming moral judgments, what is right and wrong, good or bad, because it's been so flooded from us out of survival, right? And that's where the mental tension comes in again, right? If I want to be honest, and it's like you can't be because then you can't keep drinking. Lie, right? You cannot steal. Well, if you don't steal, you can't get drunk. You can't use. Okay, so I steal, right? And that's where again the difference between personality and character. The powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. I love that shit, man, because like the idea of like we're just alone in this universe and everything's left up to chance. It is pretty nihilistic, and like I always say, I still to this day have no desire to be affiliated with any religion. Like we always me and Kelly's spiritual beliefs polar opposite and yet the same, right? Our rituals are different. What we call God is different. And the principles are the fucking same. And that's why this shit works. And it's so fucking cool. I believe in the spirit of the universe and, all that different shit. And, and it's just, I don't know, it's badass. Okay, we're fine. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. Okay, so practical application. What does that mean?
Put your thoughts into action.
Hey, fucking doing it. You're fucking doing it, man. Right? So, and this is the shit that drives me nuts about where this fellowship has gone. And this is where I get nervous of the thought of posting this on YouTube because y'all, I know I have controversial ideas and what I say, and I want to be clear that I know that the people in the rooms that kind of just come up with stuff and do it that way are super well meaning, or that's what they were taught and it worked for them somehow, some way. And I think that's great. And we look at the few people that it's worked for and the thousands upon thousands that are fucking dropping into oblivion every day, and we have a problem, right? And part of the problem is that you have a sponsor that's like, hey, you're going to be on step 1 for a month. What does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? What are you doing? Practical application. How is sitting on step 1 practical application at once? How is sitting on step 2 for a month or step 3 for a month? What are you doing? You're writing? Writing what? You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, when I have a sponsor who's got some time, then we're going to dive deeper. I'm going to give them a little powerlessness inventory. We're going to go into what I need and want of God stuff. We're going to go into more step 3 and take some selfishness inventory before we do a 4-step. We're going to go there, but you have time now. You have a defense from the first drink now. If I have a girl that's fresh off the fucking street or fresh out of treatment, it's we got a boogie. 1, 2, and 3 is a conversation. 1 to 3 hour conversation. Period. Get into step 4. Have it done within the week. No fucking excuses. We gotta go. We gotta move. You ain't got the luxury or the time because that obsession is still there. But I don't want to drink. That's part of the obsession. I get that. But that's gonna go away quickly. And we gotta fucking move before next thing you know, you're sitting at fucking bonsai with your, friends, and your friends leaving, decide to sit at the bar. Right? You're at fucking a fucking vape shop, and you're like, oh, you know what sounds good? Let me try this Delta. Sure. It should be fine. It's not illegal. Shut up. Neither is alcohol.
Yeah.
Come on. Practical application at fucking once. You're not ready to do a 4-step. What does that mean? I will never understand what that means because the 4-step is designed to get you well. You're not ready to get well? You want to stay sick for a little bit and figure it out? Maybe journal? Journaling will help. Remember how you did that as a teenager and how your life is going now? But let's just try that again. The fuck? Anyway, I digress. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving, we consented. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men, as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive in their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves, and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. Literally call it whatever you want. So, when it comes to and we're not in step 2 yet, and we're going to dive into this a lot, but when it comes to the power, right, which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death, and I always say this because I know that there's always someone in the room who's really, really struggling, thinking that they have to adopt all of these ideas of of a God that they don't believe in, or that they feel has failed them, or they have religious trauma. Like all these different things exist. We all come from different places, right? So if regaining your roots in the religion that you're taught makes you feel the most connected, I think that's beautiful, and you are encouraged to do so. If finding your own conception is what makes you feel the most connected, I think that is beautiful, and you are encouraged to do so. There is no right or wrong way. That's not true. There are wrong ways to do it. All right. You know, it really is. If you make a doorknob your higher power, good fucking luck, man. Right? Because like it's not, and if you think a doorknob is greater than you, then I am concerned we have a clinical inferiority complex that we gotta look at, right? Like it's a problem. I don't want to see any of y'all hit your knees praying to a fucking doorknob. You can break it will be replaced, it is man-made and easily broken, right? You know, all the things. And then we hear a lot of people say that my higher power is group of drunks. God, right? Do I have a problem with that personally? It's not black and white. Because sometimes we take it literally. If my higher power is literally you people, I'm fucked. Right? Have y'all ever been a part of a home group that has imploded in front of your very eyes? Because I have. Literally. I remember sitting in my home group back in like 2013, and it was wild. This guy just like busts in. He starts screaming at the chairperson and everybody. They get up and he gets like grabbed by his scruff and thrown out, and everything's just chaos. Imagine if to me those specific people were God. That's a problem. Now, when I think about the fellowship and the obvious power that underlies it, right? There's some force at work that we're all trying to get connected to that's working. That I get down, right? Because I'm very much so into like energetic force and like we are connected very, very, very much so. Right. So that makes sense to me. But if it's my dog, if it's my kids, if it's my family, I'm not it's not gonna work. Right. That's why I always say like we can't stay sober for our kids or our loved ones. But that can be a motivation to do the work. You know what I mean? But they can't be God. Um, and the entire absence of profit motive. A lot of us decide to go work in treatment centers once we have 3 weeks sober and we get a little excited. And I'm like, great, man. First of all, do treatment. Sober. Terrible, terrible, terrible idea. You can't handle it. It's a bad time. Like, we have this rosy colored idea of what it looks like, and it's really, really hard, right? And it's also an incredible experience when you have time and experience under your belt. However, a lot of people who work in treatment get drunk and get high. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think that one of them is this part is that they think that it's their program now. They treat their patients and their clients like sponsees, and then they don't have sponsees, and they don't do H&Is because they're doing it 24/7. Why do I have to do this? I don't want to go to a fucking meeting. I just talk about it all day, which makes sense. I get it. I've been there. A 12-step burnout is a real fucking thing. You know what I mean? Which is why having outside hobbies in a life is so important. And my job is not service work. Service work is for free and for fun. Full stop, period. That's it. I cannot get into this delusion that I just worked 8 to 10 hours being of service. It's just not true, right? Because I'm getting paid for it. And I still love them. My heart's in it 100%. I cry when they leave and they say, I'm worried about them 24/7. That does not get erased. And it's not entire absence of profit motive, right? Granted, you're not going to get paid a whole lot, but still, right? Community spirit, that's where fellowship comes in. All these different things that they're describing right here is a really beautiful summation of what the program is meant to be. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor, and this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol in these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. And that just like feeds more and more into this fucking cycle, right? Like everything's piling up. I am so on alert 24/7. Everything feels like a fucking catastrophe. So what's the point? I'm just going to drink myself to death. Like I have lost complete control of this whole situation. I tap out. Just take me, right? I remember like being in step one class when I was literally 12 years ago. I remember so much from that treatment, and it was literally over a decade ago. It's so crazy. And the RA kept saying, like, you're gonna fucking die, and just like going off. And I'm like, that's for bullshit. And after a few days of like hearing that, like, okay, like I raised my hand, I was like, okay, but like, what if that's the point? Like I'm good with that. What if I've accepted that? What if I'm trying to get there faster? And then she looked at me and she was like, well, Nick, from my understanding of your life and your luck, you're probably going to live to the ripe old age of 70 and wish that you were dead every fucking moment of it. I was like, you know what? You're fucking right. Mullowney's don't die. What's the alternative? Am I willing to take it? These people are telling me that it works. I'm seeing that it works. Why would I not? Right? And of course, my brain's like, oh, well, it won't work for me. How fucking arrogant. Right? Like, all these people are having this whole fucking experience that have like parallel lives to me, but no, I'm the exception. This won't work for me. It's so fucking arrogant. Right? And I say it in that way because, like, it makes sense. I get it. And we gotta start to flip the script. Right? When I stay in this like victim mentality of like, no, but you don't understand. No, no one understands. Oh, we have to be so gentle. I just stay in that place. So sometimes you just gotta shake it up and be like, you're so fucking egotistical. Just, you know what I mean? People hear them, oh shit, bitch, you're right. Right? Because we're in the disease of deception. Deception, like addiction and the truth cannot coexist. So the more truth we get down to, the closer we get to permanent sobriety. Not one day at a time, not maybe someday all I have to say. Like, my goal is forever. That is the goal. That is what I want. Can I guarantee that? Of course I can't. Right? Because I can fucking stop doing the work and like be back at it any fucking time. But what I know right now is that if I continue doing what I'm doing, I'm straight. Like I'm good. And that's what we're going for. So I need someone to shake my ass up every so often. Because that craving, the phenomenon of craving, that when we talk about craving, we're not talking about the mental obsession. Mental obsession is when we're dead sober and I get high anyway. And I'm careful not to use the word I choose to get high anyway. Because I don't have that power of choice. Right? And we'll get deeper into that, but right now we're talking more about the allergy, right? Other people don't drink and then go off, and I know we already talked about that, right? But just to reinstate that, this never happens in the average temperate drinker. Does that mean that normies don't go on bitches? No, right? Especially again, like the whole conditioning thing, like it is socially acceptable in modern society to get booked up all the time. It's pushed on us from every fucking which way, right? The difference is given sufficient reason to stop and or moderate, they don't. And then they look at us and like, well, I was married for 10 years. Now I'm not. What the fuck is wrong with you? Okay? Stop it. Piss me off. The reliance upon things human, that really goes into like, there is a wrong way to make a higher power. If you can say, I always ask this, right? Whenever someone's about to, do their own thing and decides that none of this will work for them, yada yada, be like, well, I'm just going to stay sober for my kids. So my next question is typically, how old are your kids? Well, there's, my daughter's 7. I'm like, then why aren't you 7 years sober? And that's it. It's that simple.
I heard those
Right?
words.
For me to you. You're not the only one. I've said it hundreds of times.
Believe
And
that.
some people are like, I don't know. And other people are like, right, but I didn't want it. And I'm like, bullshit. Bullshit. Because now you're getting into this idea that you're a bad person. You didn't care. You did fucking care. You just, you could not rely upon things human. No matter how much you love them. Fear and love will never keep me sober, no matter how deep they are. It just doesn't work that way. Right? Because it's not a fucking moral dilemma. Right? Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. What's frothy emotional appeal?
Kind of like wish-washy,
Yeah.
trivial.
Yeah. Frothy means light and entertaining, but of little substance. Right? So, I can hear you when you say, if you love me, you'll stop. I can hear that, and I can take it to heart. But there's not enough substance in that to actually keep me sober. I want there to be, right? God, you're such a fuck up. Just quit. And I'm like, I am a fuck up. Now I just own it. You know what I mean? Like now we just like dive deeper into this identity that our alcoholism is creating for us. Right? It's not even like we created it. It's this other fucking human inside of us. So all the time, again, it's like I just need you to show up for me. I just need you. It's breaking my heart. People are crying. It's like, God, I would hope that this would be substantial enough, but it's just fucking not. And again, someone who's bipolar, they're about to go into a depressive episode. It's like, hey, don't be sad. If you love me, you'll get out of bed. If you love me, you won't have suicidal ideation. You know what I mean? Someone's about to go into a manic state. If you love me, you'll calm down. I'm good. I'm not vibrating internally. You know what I mean? It doesn't fucking work that way. Wish it did, but it fucking doesn't, right? The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. I like how it says in nearly all cases, because again, the book really isn't trying to have absolutes. We've created absolutes in this fellowship that turn a lot of people away, right? If you're able to stay sober without the 12 steps, you're not a real alcoholic. I don't really hold with that. I think that if you're able to stay sober just because you went to therapy a few times, you're not a real alcoholic, 100%. But if some other form has helped you, then like, great, man. I don't know. I'm not fucking God. Do I think that the 12 steps are the only way to stay sober? I used to think that. I don't anymore because I'm not God. I don't fucking know. You know what I mean? Like that's so narrow-minded to think that way, right? So in nearly all cases, right, we're supposed to be the last house on the block. That's what we were created for. You go do all the other things. Go try this and that and blah, blah, blah. They don't work right. Come on. Let's get you connected to God. Whatever God is to you. It doesn't fucking matter. But let's get you connected to it. Right? And the people that it's coming from, it has to be us. Like it has to be us. Because people who don't understand, and we know that. We are smart. We are very intelligent. We're very sensitive. We're very attuned, whether we want to be or not, or whether we're connected to it. There's part of us that's attuned. So when there's someone that's sitting there that just doesn't fucking get it, like I have a normie therapist. I love her more than anything in this world. And I trust her with my life. And I trust her with my mind. And I trust her with my heart. If I was to relapse, would I just go to my therapist and trust her to get me sober? No. Sure wouldn't. Right? Because it just doesn't work that way. There has to be depth and weight.
And sometimes our therapists don't seem to get the fact that we have a part in everything. Like they want to validate our feelings. And it's like, yeah, but I have to look at my part.
My mistakes. But yes. No, 100%. That's a whole other fucking thing. And that's where I always say, like, when we start doing the work, like, black and white thinking is a symptom of trauma, right? I can only see this and this. I can't see the gray. So the 12 steps seem to be counterintuitive to that because I'm being forced to look at things black and white. I'm going to write down all these resentments, people who have caused me great, great, great harm. I'm going to flip the page over. I'm going to put out of my mind anything that person has ever done. I'm going to look at my mistakes. How was I selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid? How was I? Right? Without justifying, without being like, I did this because they did that. Can't say that. I did this, period. Right? Black and white. But the thing is like, this is part of the moral psychology because I'm so used to pointing blame everywhere else. And so I was already into black and white thinking. Now I'm starting to be able to take accountability and have some actual introspect. That is so important. And so many people of us lack that because we're not awake. We're asleep to this fucking shit, right? So once we start to sort out and see my mistakes and how I show up, now enter a really, really effective therapy. Because now that I'm able to see my mistakes, sometimes I do it to a fault, right? And I allow a bunch of shit that shouldn't happen. And I do all this stuff because I'm like, no, it's me. It's always me. I'm selfish. We get to the gray, right? This keeps me sober. Therapy improves my quality of life, right? Oh shit. All right. Well, you know what? I think that's a good spot to stop because we're out of time. Oh, okay. And next week we'll have a really nice starting point. So we love to see it. Thank you guys.
I love
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
I just like to say, I just have this morning meditation. I get my 60-day chip tonight. This is the longest I've been sober continuously since I was 12 years old. And I'll be 89 this year.
That's incredible.
Congratulations. Are you going to blue ticket? Are you going to blue ticket?
Yeah, I'm going to 720 outside Jersey.
Okay.
Hey, so I got real quick while I have this still going. Do I have everyone's permission to post this on YouTube so other people can have it? No.
You're going to see me dipping my vape.
Shut up.
Hair.
Say yes.
You can sign it to my sheet.
Now it sounds like coercion. What?